Chapter 23 of Tractate Shabbos begins by discussing some points on financial dealings on Shabbos and holidays. Obviously, that's not allowed. However, you can borrow pitchers of wine or oil or bread from somebody, as long as you don't say the words, "lend me." If the lender doesn't trust you, you can leave him your cloak as security, and after Shabbos, discuss the owed amounts. You can similarly do this on a Passover that falls out on Shabbos, with getting a Pesach offering from somebody. The Gemara explains that the issue with saying, "lend me," is that the guy will then write it in his ledger, so you have to say something else that'll imply clearly a loan of minimal duration. There's also discussion on deviation in your usual manner while filling buckets from a river on a holiday. It also says no clapping or dancing or similar on holidays, but we don't rebuke people who do this, as they won't listen to you, and it's better for somebody to unintentionally violate a commandment than to do it intentionally. Some say this applies by rabbinic and biblical commandments, and it's discussed along with similar cases. There's also some points on the reclaimability in court of a loan made on a holiday. Some allow it, some don't. The point on the paschal sacrifice is also discussed. New Mishnah: a person can count his guests or food portions orally, but not from a note. You can also portion your food via lots, provided all the portions are the same size. Similarly, Kohanim can cast lots for sacrifices on a holiday, but not for portions. That's going to be explained soon. The Gemara says that the issue with reading from a list is a rabbinic institution in case you erase, or possibly so you don't read common business-related documents on Shabbos. There's argument as to what a practical difference between these two is. It's decided it's if the list was high up, there's no concern of him erasing, but there is by the latter issue. The concern of erasing in this situation is actually disputed. There are further points. The thing about divvying up portions via lots works with your family, but not with others, as they'll violate measuring or weighing or counting on Shabbos, which is forbidden due to their particularities. It says that you actually can divvy uneven portions to your family in order to teach your children about how interest works, and how it's not great to be on the receiving end of it. You can't do it with others, even not on Shabbos, as it's an issue of gambling. When we said that Kohanim cannot make lots for portions on holidays, it means for portions of sacrifices of the preceding weekday, as they tended to argue. It also lists many verses speaking about the righteousness of Tzidkiah and the wickedness of Nebuchadnezzar, who would assault his captives, and until he died there was no laughter or song, and also you shouldn't stand in his house, as it says that demons would dance there. It also says that due to Nebuchadnezzar's violations of his captives, his organ became greatly malformed, and a few other points that he rode on a lion with a serpent tied to its head based on some verses. No hiring workers on Shabbos or having someone hire workers for you. You also can't wait at the boundary until nightfall to be able to hire workers, but you may wait there to guard your produce, and you can bring back produce by hand. Someone said a general rule that whatever you're permitted to tell someone to do on Shabbos, you can wait until nightfall to do it yourself. The Gemara says that included in not having somebody hire workers for you on Shabbos includes not having a non-Jewish person do it for you. Others say what it refers to is not being able to outright ask somebody to hire your workers, but you can imply it. There are further points on this and circumstances as to when you can't say the Shema prayer. There's further points on things you can and cannot say, calculations you can't make until after Shabbos, of things that happened, and similar. It also says a story that a pious man had a hole in his fence, so decided to fix it, but realized it was Shabbos, so he didn't. So he was rewarded that a caper tree grew through the hole and provided a livelihood for him and his family. There are further similar discussions in regards to muktzah. Also, in regards to taking care of your affairs, normally you can't do that until you hear the Havdalah prayer, which marks Shabbos' end, but some would just say a short blessing version of Havdalah and go do their work. This and its similar cases are discussed. New Mishnah: you can wait for nightfall and Shabbos to end out the boundary to attend the affairs of a bride or a deceased person to bring a coffin or shrouds. If a non-Jewish person brought flutes for a funeral on Shabbos, after Shabbos you can't use them, unless they came from a nearby place. If a non-Jewish person made a coffin or dug a grave on Shabbos, a Jewish person can be buried in them, but not if it was made for a Jew on a Shabbos, as it's problematic and you can't be buried in it. The Gemara argues if it's enough to suspect that this person came from a nearby place or to know it, and there are proofs brought. The coffin and grave can be used right after Shabbos, and you don't need to wait, as they were possibly made for a Jewish person, as this case is where the grave and coffin are by a main road, which is not where Jewish people are typically buried. New Mishnah: you can attend to the needs of a deceased person on Shabbos. You can anoint and rinse him if you don't move his limbs. You can pull pillows from under him so he lies on cool sand so his body remains moist. You can bind the jaw, not so it's pulled up, but just so it doesn't drop down further. Similarly, by a beam that broke, you can support it, not pushing it back up, but so it doesn't fall further. The Gemara says that you can't wash a stone floor with oil, as you might mistakenly then do it on an earthenware floor, which has an issue that you might level it. No such issue exists by a corpse. It lists some other things that you can do to prepare a corpse and further points on that regard. New Mishnah. No closing the eyes of the dead on Shabbos. And also, don't do that on a weekday right after the person dies either, as if you do, you're considered a murderer. The Gemara explains that it could be that this person might be about to die, and you hasten it by closing his eyes, like putting your finger on a flickering candle. It gives further explanation on closing the eyes of the dead, and it says that you can violate Shabbos to save a live 1-day-old baby, as then it could grow to keep many Shabbosim. But you can't violate the Shabbos for even a dead King David, as he was mentioned already a few times, as he's no longer doing any mitzvahs at that point. It also says this applies by animals, that they'll attack anybody once they're dead. It also says that a lion doesn't attack two people, but this is according to the opinion that animals will only attack people that they regard as animals due to their wicked behavior. It also says it's forbidden to sleep alone in a house, as then you'll be seized by Lilith, the mother of demons. There are further points on doing good while you can, like giving charity and Mashiach's coming, where poverty won't exist. It also says that young Torah scholars do not become poor, meaning they are spared indignities of begging. It also expounds on some points about aging, referenced in the book of Ecclesiastes, how your body begins to lose function over time. It also says 3 types of tears are bad, from smoke, crying, and stomach pain, and 3 types of tears are good for your eyes, from medicine, laughter, and good-smelling produce. It further expounds a number of euphemisms in regards to old age, and relates a incident where a sage, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, got into an argument with a certain eunuch, and they cleverly insulted each other using euphemism and play on words, which are listed here, which eventually resulted in them insulting each other not using euphemism. There are further points on the decline of the body due to old age. It also expounds on a verse that it's strange that men are so attracted to women, as logically they have menstruation, which is pretty gross, and yet in spite of that, that's the way things are. There are further similar points. It also says that if someone has no mourners, 10 people should mourn for him for 7 days, and this is a story where this happened. Some say the body is aware what's being said around him until the grave is closed, some say until the flesh decomposes. It also discusses what happens to the souls after they pass very briefly. The righteous and intermediate go beneath the heavenly throne, the wicked get flung back and forth across the universe by angels. It also says that this one sage, when his grave was disturbed centuries after his passing, he made a noise at the diggers and then spoke with a different sage. He said he hadn't rotted, as he didn't envy while he was alive. The sage invited the corpse to his house, but he said he couldn't until the resurrection of the dead with God's permission. It also says that the righteous do not have their corpses decay, but they will decay right before the resurrection of the dead, based on a verse. A Sadducee heretic once asked, based on this, how Shaul had asked a necromancer to bring back Shmuel, and it was answered that it was within 12 months and it hadn't yet reached its final resting place. Some say that you can tell if somebody will enter the world to come based on how stirred people get by the eulogy, and there's a related incident. Some say it's based on if you please your teachers with your conduct. There are further points given on this topic. There's an analogy given of a king who prepares a feast and tells his servants to prepare, so the wise servants do, and the foolish ones don't, so the king lets those that prepared eat, and those that hadn't just had to watch, comparable to the righteous and the wicked, by the world to come. There are further points described, and that's the end of chapter 23.